Hey guys, and welcome to the Performance Hub podcast, and thanks for tuning in. So before we get started, we want to let you guys know about an amazing offer we have going at the moment. Using the coupon code COMMUNITY, we have 1 month's free access to the Performance Hub. So this is our online members site where we have tons of content from in-depth exercise tutorials, videos on different strength and conditioning methods, program templates, articles on nutrition, stress management, and just a ton more content. So head over to www.pikeperformance.uk to sign up and get started on that today. As well as that, below this video, we've linked all our social media channels, as well as all of our guest socials. So go and like and comment and share, as it really helps us to be able to produce more content for you guys, like the interview that we had today. Okay, so that's enough of that. Let's dive into today's interview and see what it's all about. Hey guys, and welcome to the Performance Hub podcast. So today we have Chris Miah, who is a 10-year MMA veteran. He's competed on shows such as BAMA, Cage Warriors, ACB, and is just a great guy. He's a strength and conditioning coach, and he's got a lot to say about this subject. So really excited to talk to him about longevity in MMA. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation. Okay, welcome guys. Great to have you here with us. So today we've got a great guest, Chris Miah. I've already done a little intro and given you a bit of background, but why don't we hear from Chris kind of a bit more about your history and sporting and work history and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Hello there. Yeah, thanks for having me on. So my kind of history, I started mixed martial arts when I was 16. And it was just really I wanted to start a martial art, and it just so happened to the club I went to. I thought I was going to a boxing club, and it was a mixed martial arts club at Stevie B's in Adcox Green, and it also had Gracie Barra Birmingham there, so we had quite a good pedigree straight away to train with. Unlucky for myself, Gracie Barra was a little expensive, so to be honest, that's why I ended up going in towards MMA to begin with, was because I was a young kid and pricing for jiu-jitsu was quite expensive at the time. So I ended up doing MMA and then obviously upskilling with jiu-jitsu. I stayed at that club for quite a while and fought as an amateur, turned pro, had a decent career on BAMA, and then sort of outgrew the training environment to some extent because I was like the only pro there. So I was sort of searching for other gyms, of sort of scattered around Birmingham, and then ended up going to Team Titan in London with Brad Pickett quite a lot. I spent sort of 2 years with those guys, traveling up and down. It got a little bit much traveling, but again, I got to compete internationally on Akhmat in Chechnya in Russia. I competed then on ACB, and recently signed to Cage Warriors and competed on Cage Warriors. So, I mean, there's a lot in between there, but kind of now I'm at Team Renegade, where kind of a lot of the best guys around the Midlands all kind of got together and just went to one place. And that's kind of where I train now and where I'm based out of now. And I recently fought in October. So that's kind of a quick rundown of what I've done athletically. Jiu-jitsu comps, MMA fights in between, to gain a lot of experience. But when I was an amateur, I decided this is what I want to do with my life, and how can I best support that. You know, I was one of them young and foolish. You think you're going to be in, there's a meme yesterday, but you think you're going to be in the UFC at 24. So for me, I was, I think like, you're 7-0 unbeaten, the world's at your feet, and then life gets in the way, injuries, teammates, bad decisions, bad fights, things happen. But I studied sports therapy as kind of a backup plan, but it also linked in nicely with what I was doing. And then, so I done my undergrad in sports therapy when I was about 19. So I finished at about 21, 22. And sort of, I always gravitated towards rehabilitation and exercise rehabilitation within therapy, because without getting too much onto the research, if you look at research in terms of rehabilitation, it just all pointed towards like exercise prescription rather than a lot of the hands-on modalities. And for me, if someone comes to me, I want to be able to point blank. I like the sort of analytical side of going, well, you were at point A and I've took you to point B, rather than sort of the sort of pseudo science you get with a lot of hands-on treatments. It's very hard to distinguish. So I sort of started moving then towards more S&C coaching, and I was very lucky to have the opportunity to help out through some mutual friends and my boxing coach, Matthew Macklin, and the MGM stable of fighters at the point in time. He was coming towards the end of his career, but I straight away got a chance to work with some really high level pro boxers, which was a really good learning curve for me at the time.
Yeah, that.
And then I found, obviously, I was always reading myself, and I was experiencing things myself along the way while I was competing. And I sort of became the go-to guy locally. People would ask me sort of questions on whatever topics there were. And I always wanted to then go on to further study and go towards like an S&C Masters at a point in time. 2 years ago, then I competed on ACB, and after the fight, I had Bell's palsy.
Okay.
So it was like the week after, and because of the side effects of that, it was unsure whether I would compete again. So that led me then to go to St Mary's and do the Open Uni MSc on strength conditioning, which just tied in great because I took more of a coaching role then. So I'd say I've been coaching probably for the best part of 8 years, but I've been coaching sort of full time, 20, 30 hours a week the past 2 years since that fight. With a selection of jiu-jitsu guys, MMA guys, and some jump up guys. And then, so I started St Mary's. I'm just finishing up my second year now there. And in the meantime, I've also gone and done the CSCS qualification.
Oh,
so
amazing,
that's the sort of like the standardization of S&C coaching in America. I think that's really important. I know we have like UKCA in England, we have CSCS, the Australian have one. Hopefully the industry starts to move towards governing bodies. I think that's quite a good thing. So then that's kind of led me to where I'm at now, where I competed again in October just gone. And I was coaching a lot alongside that. And I'm at a little bit of a crossroads at the minute in terms of which to pursue full time. Because I kind of want to be the best coach there is. And but if I fight, I want to be the best fighter there is, in Europe. And so it's come to the point to make a decision on which one to go for the immediate future. But I hope that's not too all over the place, but that's led me to where I am now.
I'd say, like you say, if you're going to get to the top of any industry, really, athletically or professionally, you really need to make a decision about committing 100% to that. So I can see you're in a bit of a dilemma in terms of where do you put your eggs, because it's going to be tricky to do both and be obviously to the level that you want to be with both of those things.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's like with fighting, the smart man in me would say to go to coach, because but obviously you've got that the performance side here and the athlete in you that wants to fight the best guys in the world. So it's a weird one.
Well, that's when you come back to competitive jiu-jitsu. You can do the coaching and, it's a little bit easier, I think, to do the training for jiu-jitsu maybe than MMA and be a higher level competitor,
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. That's something I see a lot of. I've got quite a few friends who do in coaching, and a lot of them tend to kind of do jiu-jitsu competitively as a hobby, and I think that can go pretty. That especially like UK European level can go really well with a full-time coaching job,
Definitely, and you got big shows in the UK now, so the travel's kind of can be minimal with Polaris and some of the bigger shows up north and things like that. So it's definitely something to think about, isn't it?
No, right. Definitely.
So really, like today, we want to look a little bit at MMA kind of specifically, because like I said, the training to be a top level MMA fighter can be pretty grueling. And you see, even in my short time in this kind of industry, I've seen a lot of guys come in and burn really bright, but not burn for very long in terms of their kind of careers, if you like. And they look really promising for a while, and then they kind of died off. And when you kind of look objectively, maybe at the way they were training, it's a busy load. It's a busy training week, and it's lots of fights throughout the year, and it seems like there's a lot of. It's very easy to get that kind of burnout, if you like, and then a lot of promising names kind of fall by the wayside. So I'd be really interested to get your kind of view on how strength and conditioning and how an S&C coach, as well as the skills coaches and just generally, I guess the kind of nature of, you know, the way we're coaching people, how that can play a role in kind of ensuring that someone has a long and successful career, really.
Yeah, so I think that's a massive factor for a lot of fighters, and probably myself included. I'd say at a certain age, sort of mid-20s, I kind of burnt out and then needed a little bit of a break, and then to try and go back again. And I've seen it very common in our gym as well. And I've seen a lot of people come, a lot of people go over the years. I think it comes down to a few things. One is obviously the nature of the sport tends to attract this. You have like the fighter mentality. That more is better, do more, because of the psychological component of the sport. And some people can't just go, right, I've done this and I've done a good job, I've done my rounds and I'm going to go home. Because of the psychological component of having a fight and making sure you've given enough. Sometimes you can give too much. And again, then the same with sort of strength and conditioning. You'll get a set plan that fighters will get, but they'll always want to do more or do extra. And I do think it comes down to sort of having an overall coaching philosophy between the S&C coaches, if they work with therapists, and the skills coaches and the athlete themselves, to kind of get them in a good place to look at all the aspects of the sport. So like psychologically, why are you doing this? Because also some people are in it to call themselves an MMA fighter and have a short burst. Some people are in it to be the best in the world, and the sort of time and training processes we can go through with them guys are going to differ. And obviously covering the technical, tactical and physical side of things as well. So you've got like psychological, technical, tactical and physical. They're all interlinked. And in my opinion, until we start addressing all of those globally, we're going to struggle in MMA to keep guys fresh in the sport for a long period of time.
And so, I mean, really, that global approach it probably can't be addressed with one person, can it? Would it be a team approach amongst all of the coaches, or?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, like I think we're quite a bit behind other professional sports, and rightly so, because it is still a new sport, despite it going back decades and decades and decades of fighting. Mixed martial arts is a new sport. There needs to be some kind of collaboration effect, and I feel that's how we can stop burnout. We can get the best training adaptation that we want as S&C coaches, and the fighters can make the most progress as well. And I still don't see that much across the board yet. I think it will come down the line, and obviously guys like us who are involved in sort of the skill side and the strength condition side can start to slowly bridge the gap, and hopefully one day coaches are well versed in everything, where, you know, like I think the most successful teams have sort of unison between all the coaches, and there's an understanding between them all as well.
Certainly. I mean, one of I think we almost need to have separate conversations in terms of the populations that we're dealing with, because even within an MMA team, for example, you're going to have different tiers of fighters, aren't you? And, you know, coming from the bottom, which would be people that are literally just doing it for fun and might never even have a fight, and then your amateurs, your early pros who are fighting on smaller cards, and then obviously your top of the tree pros who are fighting on the bigger cards. It seems like they all have different requirements placed upon them in terms of the camp length. So, you know, how long they're going to have in between fights, you know, the expectations of the skills coaches. I guess one of the main difficulties that I've encompassed, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, is how the skills coaches tailor for all these people but still take an individual approach to make sure each individual is getting what they need in terms of the volume intensities of their training.
Yeah, so I think it's again it's a new sport, so it can be difficult to, like you say, it's the beauty of our sport that you can allow a relative novice to train with high level international fighters in the same training session. It's kind of a beauty, because like a lot of other sports do not allow that. Pro boxing, you will never get that.
Yeah.
Freestyle wrestling on Team TV, you won't really get that. So I think that is the beauty of our sport, that you do get access to that, but it also can hinder the training process. On that note of kind of development, a friend of mine, Dean Garnett, runs a gym, Aspire, up in Liverpool.
Okay.
And he has he trains a lot of youth, and he's trying to bring through like youth athletes from a younger age to get them ready towards mixed martial arts as they get older. So they learn prerequisites, they learn movement skills, and they learn all these things along the way. And it's having a framework. If you look like most other sports, wrestling, boxing, rugby, football, or they have like a gymnastics, they have a framework of like early development, middle development, expertise. So like depending on where they're at in their career, the sort of main goals that we need to be teaching. And I don't think we have that quite yet in MMA. So like you say, you could get a relative novice to MMA or an amateur fighter, and we're trying to learn techniques just as an example, but like he hasn't got the balance to stand on one leg, for example. And this is common, believe it or not. I coach at a university, and some of the physical attributes leave a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
And we're trying to teach takedown defense to these guys, say single leg defense, but they can't stand on one leg. It's the analogy I always give. You're going to have a hard time learning any kind of defense. Yet some of the higher level UFC fighters need to be doing, or higher level international guys need to be doing specifics, because just learning a basic technique's not enough. They need to be able to do it in practice. So it's there is a mass discrepancy between talent levels on the mat. We've just had a big change at our gym at Renegade in that regard, in terms of we're doing a lot more MMA specific stuff, sort of moving away from sort of just jiu-jitsu or just wrestling or just striking it, and sort of doing a lot more cage work, ground and pound draws on the ground. And I believe that for me and a lot of the other high-end guys at the gym, it's an absolute blessing, because we can, that's where the specificity at that high level of training is needed. We get some of our amateur team coming to those sessions and the whipping boys, because they don't have fundamentals in place. They haven't learned to do simple basic escapes without strikes, never mind with them. So you're absolutely right. There's such a discrepancy on the mat between talent levels and physical capacities that people have. It can be a minefield for a coach to try and structure practice.
And so then I suppose when we come in and we're trying to maybe work with a proportion of the team, individuals perhaps, I guess there's that trying to have some understanding around the skill practice, and then modifying how we're going to work, or maybe having that as the root of everything that we build off us. Certainly that's something that I've spoken to our kind of MMA coach about, and trying to get more of an understanding about what they're doing, and then how can I build everything that I do around that, rather than me maybe going in with certain expectations that, okay, my guy needs to do a lighter session here. It's probably not going to maintain a very good relationship if I have too high expectations, and B, not maybe going to work so well in terms of how that fighter is going to incorporate his own training within the class environment.
Yeah, that's it. And like it seems like the answer is just communication, but to some extent it is in that regard. Like depending on what the practice consists of. So whether you have Monday morning, most gyms around the country is like wrestling practice or cage wrestling, or whatever it is. It seems to be the template we've took from America. So like if we're doing hard rounds on that morning, and you got competitive rounds, that's a really high day. So we could ideally entice our training to correspond with that. Tuesday, maybe in an ideal world, it might be like technical drills, some rolls. This is the way I think the sport needs to go. But if they're coming to us on a Tuesday and we hammer them with S&C, with heavy CNS taxing, lifting and conditioning, and then they're sparring on a Wednesday, this is where we're going to get burnout, because it's not all corresponding. There's not a synergy between what the skills guys are doing, the skills coach is doing, and we're doing it. I love strength and conditioning, and I love improving performance, but we've got to understand that obviously the skills coaches, skills are the most important thing within the sport for most people.
Mm. So how do you match? So it sounds like you use a like high-low system in terms of, you know, looking at the intensity of the days of training. Is that right?
That's what I'm going towards. It's very hard to get a lot of guys to do. I'm trying to do it with some of our younger guys at the gym, and I do it myself. In my last training camp, I tried to run a high-low schedule. I have an S&C coach myself, just because I'm like all of the fighters and second guess everything I do. So someone tells me what to do, I'll do it.
You want to give your coach a shout out?
Yeah, Gay Performance on Instagram. He's a track coach and an S&C Masters student as well. Okay. So it's good for me from a learning perspective to learn that kind of side of strength and conditioning a little bit more, because I speak to him a lot about other modalities coming from a track background. But he does a great job for myself.
Check him out.
That's the way I would like the sport to go. Not necessarily even high-low, but to at least be synergy. Like a lot of other sports use the high-low model, and I think it can work. It's creating buy-in from the athletes, the coach, and then of course yourself. And I feel like fighters, again, it's the beauty and the curse of the sport. Fighters have so much autonomy over what they do. A lot of the time, they can justify anything that they decide to do. If you're other pro sports, obviously there's a little bit more regimented routine of like, this is what we know that can help be successful. This is the way we run practice. Whereas like if you have a pro rugby team or whatever it may be, the Olympic wrestling teams in America or Canada or these sort of things, they have their wrestling practice and they have their S&C session within a day. They're not just going, you know what, I'm just going to do some bro training after and do sprints for the crack because I feel like it. And I feel like MMA, and you see it quite a bit in pro boxing as well still, because again, they have so much autonomy as athletes. Sometimes they can be misguided by what they see or get influenced by what they see, rather than like listening to the experts. Obviously, it's our job to educate as well.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, I could think of examples where that, like, autonomy and education has gone really well, you know, and the person has bought into the system, they've understood what you're trying to explain to them, and they're making decisions day to day using data, using, you know, subjective and objective data, using what they're seeing, what their practice is, and they're making good decisions. Okay, I'm going to pull back today. All right, I'm going to, you know, try harder today. I'm going to do my S&C tomorrow, actually, because today didn't work properly. And there are definitely good examples, but I think, like with anything, it's totally individualized, isn't it? And I can think of times where it hasn't gone right at all.
Yeah.
Someone's, you know, ended up acquiring injury or something like that because they just haven't made great decisions. So it's that autonomy is difficult. I suppose, again, it goes back down to good conversations. And if you're laying out a system and then putting all the other coaches in the loop, other people, there's other like satellites of accountability, if you like, to kind of say, look, you shouldn't be doing this today. Your plan says X, even if the S&C coach isn't there, you know, it's kind of getting that in.
Yeah, definitely. John Kavanagh was on, a colleague of mine, Rosie Sexton, that has a podcast, Combat Sports Clinic, and John was on, and he was saying about sparring, and he was like, look, if he's watching the sparring session and they've done 3 rounds and the technique's gone to pot, that's it. The skills coach is calling that for today, and we're going to go. You know, and I feel like
that's great.
It's sort of common sense, but it's not that common across all of us. You know, if we come in and a guy comes into us and they're run down from practice and they're miserable, they look like shit, and they're just lethargic, we need to be able to pick up on that and potentially tailor our session.
Well, let me question you about that, because I understand this principle, but it took me a while to understand it. I knew I wanted to work like this, but I didn't fully understand what people were talking about. And the first person I heard talking about this quality over quantity, or quality over hard work, was Joel Jameson, and then people like PJ Nestler, I think it is, were talking about it. And I didn't quite grasp it, because there was always the idea of, if things are getting messy and it's hard, look, this is just what it's like. this is what it's like in a competition. This is what it's like late into the rounds. It's messy and it's hard. So let's recreate this. But actually, it's not like that, is it? Do you want to just explain it a little bit to some people who might be a little bit confused about that quality over hard work kind of idea?
Yeah, so I mean, look, they're great coaches as well. I'd say that George Jameson's had a massive influence on a lot of what I do over the years. But yeah, we associate, and I think this applies to the general public as well. And it comes down to psychology, and like you say, that's where it comes down to conversations. But we associate fighting with this mental toughness and this grind and this. If I do this and it's really hard and it feels like a fight, that when I'm in a fight, I'm going to be fine. And like you're building this some kind of mental resiliency through this graft. And I think, truth be told, is if we look at it, that's not, to me, it's an easy way out. The way I explain it is like mental toughness in my eyes is doing the correct thing at the right time. So whether that's that we're making sure we're getting our sleep. You know, if we're males, we're not in clubs, we're not chasing women all night about, you know, doing drugs in clubs till 3 a.m. and, you know, and we're going to our skills practices, we're listening to our coaches, we're doing what we don't want to improve on. But that's mental toughness and resiliency to do that consistently year round. Like, that's true toughness. But what I think a lot of us do, and we're all guilty of it, is we will sort of slip up on a lot of that stuff and then want to beast ourselves to make in our minds us think that we're working harder than everyone else, because we might be, does that make sense? Like we're kind of using that blanket of I'm working really hard here to maybe hide some of the other facts that we're not ticking boxes in other areas.
Sure, yeah.
And it does come down to quality of what we're doing. And if you look at that case of someone comes into your gym and they run down, and you can tell that visibly, maybe you use metrics like HRV or resting heart rate, maybe you just use questionnaires, maybe you just have a conversation with the athlete and you can see that they're just not in a good place. And it could be from anything. They might have had university exams, they might have split up from the partner, you know, they might have just got battered in sparring in the morning and they're mentally all over the place. And then it's for our ego, it's our ego that gets in the way. I think it's like, okay, so we've got prescribed whatever rep range and whatever percentage of our 1RMs we're meant to be doing, or RPE. Like, is it really going to make a difference in their fight if they work at a 6 out of 10 today and go home feeling good, or an 8 out of 10? Probably not. You know, what we do does matter, but not as much as we like to think. And I think it's the ego of, just push through. Are things really important? And it's the same with the other coaches. Then they get to their boxing coach and it's meant to be an easier day of training, and he wants to impose his bag and burpee or bag and bar circuit at the end of the session. You know, it's that ego of the coach. Wrestling, then you get to wrestling and you do your training, but then you're doing push-ups and burpees and sprawls at the end for the crack, like just to beast them. And I think it's that ego of the coach. And no one coach is responsible for the success of an athlete. Like, it's a collaboration. So I think it does come down to the ego of the coaches in that regard, or I believe in terms of pushing the guys too far sometimes.
Definitely. Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that that's always struck a chord with me about that quality over hard work is we're not going to, let's just put it out there, we're not working hard. You know, if you've ever grappled with someone else or got in a cage, not that I've got in a cage, but if you've ever done some sort of combat sports with someone, it's hard work. You know, if it's a combative situation and you're sparring, it's hard work. Whether it's jiu-jitsu or MMA or kickboxing, I'm sure they're both very hard as well. You know, so it's not that you're not working hard, but the idea for me is more about this: how do I want to practice things in this insanely fatigued state, so that realistically my movement quality of all my techniques has really gone down a lot. How much time do I want to spend practicing doing things badly, and how much time do I want to spend practicing things doing them very well? You know, and I think if we're always pre-fatiguing ourselves, or whatever methods people use to like make training much harder, if we're always put in those positions, then we're practicing to do things at a subpar standard. and someone who's much fitter than you, even when you get into those later rounds, there's always going to be that guy who's still going strong and he's fine because he's really fit. Your fitness has waned, and now he's working at 80-90% of his technique. You're working at 40% of your technique. Probably he's going to find an opening and win the fight. So it's about, I think, ensuring high quality practice as much as possible, really, I think.
Yeah, and that's it. Is we associate hard work in the context of I remember the days we used to do Shark Tanks and things like that with successful training, and we got asked what is fitness, or what is it? What is MMA fitness? What is what is being fit to fight? And there's so many considerations to that tie into, like you say, we can have some influence in sort of strength and power qualities. We can have some influence in sort of the physiological benefits of sort of energy system training, the aerobic system, anaerobic system, whatever we're choosing for that athlete and their fighting style, whatever we feel is important, which I think is another thing of why we can't have just blanket programming. Depending on fighting style is going to massively dictate kind of what energy systems we want to potentially work, what kind of attributes we want to work, and things along those lines. But there's also the technical side, which is massive. There's the nutrition side of fueling someone for performance, the weight cut, for example, with MMA. So there's so many things that we need to address. That just doing mentally hard practices that run you into the ground aren't necessarily developing those underpinning characteristics we want for fitness. Yourself, if you've ever rolled with someone who's much better than you, you get tired very, very quickly. So the whole thing of fitness is there's a tactical side. There's tactically. In my last fight, as a good example, I knew I could if I fight tactically astute, he was never winning that fight. Tactics, that comes down to the skills coach as well. But technical ability, tactical strategy for the competition, nutritional strategies, weight cut strategies, psychological, and then obviously we can have an effect on some of the physical characteristics, which is kind of our job. But it all ties together. And this is where, so you got a fight coming up, and we always want to train everything, but there's a certain strategy that we're going to be going into this fight with against this opponent. Maybe we want to base our training adaptations around sort of the game plan that we're going to be doing. Again, it's hard to do it. Like you said, there's such a discrepancy in levels. An amateur doesn't know who they're fighting half the time. We can be very general, but towards the higher end, and I guess we sometimes get so amazed by the higher end, but the reality is we probably work with 3 or 4 high-end guys in the reality of the sport. But we can get enticed into with them guys, it would be a lot more specific. With the sort of lower tier guys, it'd be very general.
And I guess you have a lot that kind of ties into what I wanted to ask you about next. I guess with the higher tier guys, you're getting a lot longer in each camp to periodize, potentially anyway. I know a lot of the guys I work with are fighting very, very frequently to amass records to kind of move their way up the ranks, as it were, and it makes programming challenging. Probably not what we might look at as in textbook kind of optimal. But what are your thoughts? I mean, how do you, if we kind of steer more towards the S&C side of what you do now, how do you kind of structure things for people if they're having very short repetitive camps throughout a year? How do you kind of structure things so that they're getting the kind of strength adaptations and the fitness adaptations, energy system adaptations that you're kind of looking for to peak them, but also to get that continual development throughout the year?
So I think before I was very much along the lines of almost like black periodization. Like you say, we've if you look at Duncan French, he's done a plan for the UFC PI, and like you say, they're the high end fighters, and they can have it set out. Here's what I do with 8 weeks. Here's what I do with 12 weeks. What I feel like with a lot of the amateur guys is you need to be spinning all plates all times. So it doesn't mean that you won't necessarily train a quality. You will train every quality all the time, but then depending on where you are in a fight camp, you would obviously do a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that. But you're trying to spin qualities all together because, like you say, you can get you can be competing really regular. So whereas you look at like fight camp for a pro, you might transition from sort of a GPP block to sort of max strength, and then start to be looking at towards more power and speed variants right near competition. Like that would be like what you would see traditionally on paper.
Yeah,
maybe we don't, we sort of tick everything over a little bit, where, you know, we're still lifting heavy when we're doing speed work, because we don't want the guy to go off lifting completely for sort of 8 weeks and then he's fighting again into, you know. So we're keeping a small amount. There is a fancy word for it, but I can't. Vertical integration, maybe. This is where,
okay.
but this is where I don't really pay too much attention to sort of those things. But it is a case of you're trying to spin various adaptations all at the same time, but just choosing when we're going to work one a little bit more. So it would be a case of them, we're still getting a strength stimulus right up to fight night because it's an amateur fight, but the main part of the training will be on sort of like speed, strength and speed work. Then maybe straight after a fight, they're doing a little bit more sort of robustness, hypertrophy, GPP, whatever you want to call it, but they're still lifting fast and they're still doing strength work. You can kind of concurrently run everything and just sort of doing a little bit more of the attribute that we want at that time, because like you say, if someone's having 5 fights in a year and you're never actually getting a chance to hit sort of max strength, you're kind of not getting the long-term adaptations we want from training. So it is difficult. So as well as some of the amateurs now are, and again, this is a point of contention. Obviously, your club seems like the fighters are really active, but a lot of our amateurs almost train like pros.
Right.
And I actually don't agree with that personally. I feel like trying to mirror your schedule and your training on what a pro who's trained for 10 years can be foolish, because you're not necessarily doing what got them to where they're at right now. It's kind of like you read your favourite fighters or your favourite athletes' S&C program. What GSP does now isn't what he done 5 years ago, and that isn't what he done 5 years before, and that isn't what he done 5 years before. And you're looking at what he's doing now. And I think, like, I actually think your probably model is good at having amateurs fighting really actively and gaining a lot of experience.
Yeah, you know, if we took it to just a weightlifting side, and we had a new gen pop type, for example, someone come in, maybe they've been lifting for a year or two, or maybe they've not been lifting at all. The kind of approach that I'd use with that person is going to be very, very different to the approach that I'd use for someone who's been lifting for 10 years. You know, that they're just completely different kind of ability to tolerate training, essentially. So I suppose it's, you know, the 10-year vet, they may be training much harder in each session because, or their hard sessions might be a lot more intense. Whereas your, you know, new guy, your amateur guy, the intensity that they can give might not be anywhere near that, because they just haven't got the, you know, the experience and the capability to work that hard.
No, yeah, that's a really good point. In that regard of what output are you giving in, is an athlete giving in a session, and it can be quite hard to track. But like, I know myself, when I have competitive rounds, like, and I go and travel and the rounds are very high level, like, I'm in a bad way for the rest of the day. I'm tired. You know, if I've done 5 fives, I'm going to sleep, and you'd be lucky to get a jog out of me on the evening.
Yeah.
You know, vice versa. You can go and spar 5 rounds with someone, and your output's a lot lower, and then you can go and do something else and go and do something else. And I feel obviously it's the same in the weight room. If we look at how, like, the stronger you are, the more you need to recover in the weight room is pretty common knowledge. So the same in what our outputs are in wrestling. Like doing a wrestling class and doing a warm up and doing some technique and having a bit of a mess around is very different than doing a practice and you're going hard goes for 45 minutes. Like you said, the output expended, and then also, like, that's going to have a big difference in how we kind of plan a training week. Does that make sense? Yeah. Whereas, like you say, an amateur who's sort of just trying to acquire skills, they might be able to put in double the time that a high-end pro puts in. And obviously training age and injury history and all these things also come into play in terms of how much volume can someone can someone do? It's something I'm looking at is like even muscle fiber type can play a role in how quickly you recover from strenuous sessions and things like that. Again, down to the outputs that you're giving within those sessions, because you don't know some guy who, when they're fresh, they give hell, but 3 or 4 days into the week, they're not at the races because they're just not recovered.
And I think your training partners as well. As I was explaining this to someone the other day, and I was saying in jiu-jitsu, and I'm sure it's the same in MMA, every time you turn up to training, it's hard, you know, and you think it's hard when you're a white belt because you're a white belt, and or a beginner MMA guy, you know, essentially a white belt in MMA, if you like, they're there and they're hard because everyone's better than them, and they're getting beaten up and what have you. And then you get your blue belt and you think it's hard because you're a little bit better now and the white belts are coming after you. And you think it'll be easier when I get my purple belt, my brown belt, or my black belt will get much easier because I'll be much better. But you just don't realize that as you get up to those higher levels, now every fight is hard, pretty much. Even the not very good guys, they're coming at you like it's their World Cup final. And so you're having although technically it might not be a difficult fight, but you're having to use a fair bit of energy, potentially, maybe not all the time. But then your purple belts, your brown belts that you're training with predominantly, all of those fights, they're all hard, you know, unless you say, oh, we're just going to have an easier one, you know. So as you get better, your training partners get better, and the intensity of those rounds is much higher than it would have been in a kind of wild west white belt, you know, sparring role. So it's, I think, but just to come back to what you were saying about fiber type, this is something that I've certainly noticed. And what are your kind of observations with that in terms of people's ability to train and then recover? What would you say what you're noticing?
Like, I'm sure there was research to back it up. I'll have to actually have a look, but I'll have to read certain. But from my experience of what I've seen of athletes, is it would be the people who are a little bit more fast twitch. They tend to be very good when they're fresh, and it's for a training session, and their outputs are going to be very, very high. But their recovery for Wednesday session might not be there. It might take a little bit longer, another 24 hours to sort of recover to get back to baseline, to then go again at that intensity. You've got other guys who are a little bit more slow switch. They'll grind Monday to Friday without much of a drop in intensity. But then I think that also plays into a fighting style and what you're actually doing when you're on the mats. And, you know, like a fast twitch guy shooting blast double legs, that's a hell of a lot more taxing than a guy who's going to, even in jiu-jitsu terms, that you're going to pull guard, play De La Hiva, look to off balance, look to sweep. That's a lot less taxing in the regard of sort of CNS taxing than shooting blast doubles and suplexing and sort of heavy fast guard passing. So again, it is an individual basis, but from my observations, you tend to see a little bit more fatigue, which would make sense in terms of what we know about energy. The fast twitch guys will tend to fatigue a little bit more than but then that plays in with where I'd like the sport to go in terms of technical, tactical side of things. I mean, again, it's analogies, but like Yoel Romero is a good example of how he fights is how that suits his body type, as in he'll do nothing for 3.5 minutes, but burst for 10 seconds and win the round. He knows if he engaged for 3 minutes, he would fatigue. Nick Diaz is the polar opposite. He'll go and go and go and go and go, engage, because that's what suits his body type. So I think mixed martial arts is going towards that way now, where you have got to be successful, you've got to be able to be managing all the components of the athlete.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting you give those two examples, because if we're looking at longevity in terms of a career, I would imagine someone who can manage a good workload throughout the week, someone like Nick Diaz, for example, and your slow twitch kind of guys, maybe would have better like outcomes in terms of how long they can actually train for in terms of their career, you know. But Yoel Romero is actually quite an older guy, isn't he? So he must have been going for a fair old time. I'm not too up on his kind of S&C routines or how he trains, but I'd be interested to see the way he structures his training week, to see if he really builds it around these very short, intense sessions, you know, maybe less frequently, you know, which suits his kind of his fiber type and maybe his personality. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard as well looking at the top guys, because it's good in a way because you want to see what they're doing. But like some guys are just phenomenal athletes in spite of what they do. And it can be, this is a thing I find quite hard as an S&C coach sometimes, is you're trying to explain like philosophies and styles of training, modalities that we're using, but they'll just see someone who's a really good fighter doing something totally random, and like, yeah, but he's doing it, and people need to realize they might not be that person. GSP is a real
Floyd Mayweather holding dumbbells and punching and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, even like Floyd Mayweather's pad work routines. One, I don't think he does that behind closed doors anyway. But two, it's like everyone's copying that, and it's like, well, again, it comes back to that. What got him to the dance? A 1-2 in amateur boxing got Floyd Mayweather to Olympic gold. You know, literally a jab cross, moving in and out. So that's what got him to that high level. And okay, he does these extra routines. And I think GSP is very similar. And I think a lot of people use GSP a lot in Birmingham, because a lot have been over to train at TriStar, and GSP does gymnastics. So gymnastics are a tool, as is everything else. But they've kind of used him as an example. Oh, look, this is what gymnastics does. And it's like, well, GSP had an S&C coach, John Chamberberg, for a decade, done variations of Olympic lifting, sprinted, and yeah, he's done gymnastics. There's loads of people that do gymnastics that aren't good at fighting. You know, people like to use they'll use exceptions they'll use exceptions to the rule rather than the rule. And I think we all need to be careful of that in terms of cherry picking what an athlete does necessarily. But I do think in terms of fighting style, certainly needs to match the athlete's underpinning physiology. And even in terms of speaking to Rosie about this with S&C, this is where I see it going. Well, if we have a guy who shoots a lot of double legs and he's getting extended and he's just weak in the finishing position, the skills coach eventually can be the role where they're telling us then, well, they need to get stronger in the hips and the lower back, or to keep that position a little bit better in the shot. And then we have an influence in that. And then they go back and learn the skill again, and now they're better at the skill. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I think there's a couple of things there, aren't there? I guess talking to your athlete and observing their fights and their training, if possible. It's not always, possible to get that level, or maybe to observe people all the time. But if you get that opportunity to kind of observe people, kind of trying to pick apart performance and catering, obviously, what you're doing in the gym to what you're seeing. But yeah, that two-way dialogue between the skills coach and the S&C coach to get feedback about that this person's not doing very well in this respect, and then starting to tailor some of what you're doing. Again, then you're getting that buy-in, I guess, from the skills coach, because they're able to come back. It's not just you saying what's going on, like, this is what I'm doing, how can we get these things to work together? It's they're getting the ability to come back in and say, okay, this is what I need from you, and we go, okay, great. Let's kind of tailor things around that.
Yeah, I think that helps with relationships between the skills coach and ourselves, because sometimes there can be conflict. I think if you allow them to feel like they're controlling a little bit of the input, it's going to make them feel better about sort of strength and conditioning. And like that's where I see the sport really going in over the long term, is we build our training synergistically with the skills coach. So even our energy systems work. Like I said, Joel Jameson had a big influence on me, but we're doing our conditioning, our set heart rates, whether we're doing aerobic capacity, whether we're doing lactic work, whatever we decide to do. Why can't we be doing this with skills? Like, I would much rather a guy doing their aerobic work on the pads, refining technical development, than doing, we're all running now because everything's shut. But,
a few of my guys are doing shadow boxing in car parks. I've seen you doing that as well, shadow boxing.
I'm past the car. But for me, if we could get sort of threshold training with drills off the skills coach, whether that be ground and pound on the bag drills, whether that be takedown entries, whatever we're doing, if we can start to have some influence in the skills training and developing the capacities that we want with skills, for me, that's where like Demetrius Johnson and Joel Jameson, I know a lot of their work was built around that.
Yeah.
I really do think that's the next step of the sport. So we're not, like you said about longevity, and I'm waffling a bit in what I'm going on about, but it all ties back towards that. Can we cut down on junk training? Like, can we stop? Like, okay, so we want a cardiovascular response. Once we want to get their aerobic system working better. Okay. So how can we go about that? Maybe it means in the weight room we're doing something like aerobic GPP, where they're still lifting, they're still getting a strength stimulus, but they're training their aerobic system too. And then maybe the on the mat stuff is tailored towards aerobic capacity work, so that they've got heart rate monitors around and they're doing skills work. So now we've cut down on them having to do extra runs, extra cardio, extra this, because they've got the adaptation that we wanted, and they've got skills working, and they've got the strength working with the minimum effective dose.
Definitely. I think that could be, you could make the argument that a heart rate monitor could be the key bit of equipment to cut down on junk training. Like you say, that's a great way of putting it, because suddenly you can turn your bag work, your shadow boxing, your pad drills that you're doing with people into that specific conditioning session. Because if you can upskill someone's knowledge, their education around, this is how you structure an aerobic capacity or power session, this is how you structure your alactic sessions, your lactate development, this is how you do it in terms of monitoring your heart rate and your intensity. Go away and use whatever means you want to do this. Really, that's worth gold. That's gold, isn't it? Really.
That's where hopefully, and like I said, that does give longevity then, because rather than them doing set randomness and then going, right, I need to get my aerobics, so I'll go for a run at the end of the day, and you're getting in that soft tissue trauma at the end of the day after running, and you've already like exactly that. We can cut down in the weight room. So we want to get an aerobic stimulus, but we want to keep our guys lifting because we don't want them to not lift, and we don't really want junk circuits. Well, maybe something like aerobic GPP works there. Carl Dietz uses that a lot. I know Will Whalen, Powering Through, uses that a lot. He's a very good coach. He's a guy who I really look up to in the industry in the UK. I think he's probably the leading guy.
I'd say so.
But maybe then we put down on some time wasted there, and like I said, if we can do that in our skills sessions, like you say, what would be wrong in drilling jiu-jitsu at an intensity that's low intensity for 90 minutes and getting your aerobic capacity working and getting better at jiu-jitsu?
Definitely, man, definitely. And that is really, I think, well, that's something when I did the conditioning, the Bioforce course, the Joel Jameson's course, that was something that he kind of spoke a lot about, is the use of kind of sport-specific conditioning, especially as you edge closer to the fight, is what can we organize your gym-based work and get that to the mats? Can you get the same adaptations that you're looking for within skill practice or extra skills practices, if you like, that people are going to do anyway, so you're not having to use an air bike or, whatever it is, a treadmill, is can they do it whilst practicing their skills? And it's going to reduce that need to constantly be training. It seems that people are constantly training now, aren't they? 2, 3 sessions, 4 sessions a day, because they're just trying to fit it all in. Well, if you can say you've got 2 skills sessions, actually your S&C is going to be covered within those sessions if you do things correctly, then that's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's where, like, this is where I feel like the role of, obviously, an S&C coach is our title, but I think over time, hopefully, the sports coach and S&C coach, it's one and the same. I think especially as more guys who do mixed martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, have also done like sports science degrees or S&C degrees, there'll be a lot more synergy in what's being given out. Because like the only thing I think we should be doing personally with the athletes is what they don't get from the sport. So if we can get every other adaptation we want from training the sport, then in the weight room or in the gym, we can give them the adaptations that we know we physically cannot get from just doing mat work or just doing boxing work or skipping or whatever it may be, whether it's max strength, rate force development or whatever. It's kind of even like punching. Like I'm seeing a friend of mine, his GCP channel on Instagram. He's put some about sport-specific training for kickboxing, and it's like the lactic work. Well, we want to punch harder, so we can do all of the medicine ball work and all of the training in the world, but why aren't we just training that energy system on the bag and hitting hard? Like, it sounds moronic, but like, want to punch harder, practice punching hard.
Do you think there's carryover in terms of strength training, in terms of punching power? Do you think that's something that really makes that much difference?
The sports scientists, we would say yes. And I think there is some decent research on things like even silly things like bench press strength versus punch power. There was a study recently. Anecdotally, probably not. Like, from what I've seen as an athlete, I feel like it's very innate. I think probably improving technical proficiencies, because you got to ask yourself how technical proficiency is going to have a bigger impact on punching power than just getting stronger. That's my athlete opinion. My S&C coach opinion would be, improving rate of force production, improving strength will make you punch harder. But actually, anecdotally, what I've seen in gyms is it does seem to be very innate, kind of like speed. We can make it better. Can we make it better? Yes. Can you turn someone who can't punch into someone who can punch really hard? Probably not.
Yeah, it does seem to be one of those things that people either kind of have or don't, or maybe, they can practice in terms of getting better at their sport. But it's, and I suppose, people might you start using S&C and incorporating that into their routines to improve their power, improve their strength in their tactical, technical kind of side of their sport. And I'm not saying that doesn't make a difference. Obviously it does. Your grappling, your ability to lift someone up, hold someone, break grips, this is definitely going to get better. Like
100%.
If you're stronger, like this is just without question. But if it's not going to necessarily help you knock someone out, or, those things that you expect might happen, maybe if they're like the real low percentages, then what should be the goal? What should people be thinking, or how should they be considering S&C in their routine? Where's the value? Why is this so important for people, especially if they're already quite strong? Why should they be doing this?
I think a lot of it for. I wrote a paper on it actually for university on sort of the morphology. I wrote on the morphological adaptations of heavy strength work and strength conditioning. And a lot of it comes with sort of like some of the sort of tertiary effects that come from lifting, whether it would be like in terms of robustness, to stand on the mats for a long period of time, to be robust. So tendons, ligaments, bones, density. We get a lot of loading. Loading far above what we get by just wrestling on the mats or just grappling on the mats. I think a lot of the tertiary benefits of S&C are the biggest carryover to performance in mixed martial arts. So it's like we have things that dynamic correspondence of does people going down the sport specific route. I'm not. There's a certain amount of correspondence with certain movements. You could argue a deadlift and picking someone up on a high crotch or like a clean. There is some correspondence there, and I bench pressing and keeping pressing people off you. But I think the tertiary benefits of weightlifting and strength and conditioning in terms of robustness and injury prevention, that's really where it excels as an athlete to keep doing. I try and my approach to S&C is we're trying to keep the guys robust enough to do more of their sport, because the sport's what's going to make them good. So the more robust we can make them and the more capacities we can give them, they can then go and learn the skills to complement those capacities. And that's kind of a thing that I've got with S&C. Someone thinks that because they get stronger in S&C, it's going to make them stronger on the mat. It's not necessarily true. They have to then go and relearn a lot of those skilled positions on the mat. with the new capacities we've given, that strength, speed, force. I always give it like a common analogy. A friend of mine, like he always used to crumble on a double leg, like just lovely entry, get in, and he'd get extended. And even though he got way stronger, when he was still sparring, he was still reverting back to old sort of motor patterns. So to then go back and relearn that skill with his new strength and capacity, when he come then again down the line 6 months later, his double leg was really good.
I can see that. And we've all rolled against that kind of, there's a brown belt at our club who's probably 60 kilos wet through. You let him get cross-face, side control, and he feels like the heaviest guy in the club. And you're not getting him off you, But I'm pretty sure if you put him in the weight room, no disrespect, Dave, his squat numbers are not going to be very good, because he doesn't lift. He probably doesn't, maybe he doesn't know how to squat. I don't know. I'm really sorry, Dave, if I'm disrespecting you. But like, he is very strong in jiu-jitsu, probably in the weight room, not very strong, So like you say, it's molding those two things together to actually get those strength improvements from your strength training. But I think certainly that's something that I kind of try and drill home with the guys is, yes, we're trying to get you stronger. Yes, we're trying to get you fitter, faster, all the things that you kind of attribute to strength training. But really, we're actually trying to stop you getting injured so frequently. Really, we're trying to condition your tendons, your muscles, your ligaments to be able to absorb more force and take more of the rigors of the sport and not crumble so much.
Really, absolutely. That is the even from a more of a holistic approach of even like some of the hormonal benefits of lifting heavy. They cross over into, again, we're just trying to give them a better support to be able to do the sport. The performance is what sells, taking the 1RMs up and people like performance metrics, but I think just building robust, resilient guys, and also this, like I said, it is all encompassing the psychological component of doing strength and conditioning you can get good habits on the guys, nutrition, sleep, lifting, so we can have quite an influence in their lives, but also just they come away from it and they've got that sense of achievement in themselves because it's measurable, that they've got stronger or they've got fitter or whatever the measurement is, and then they go onto the mat thinking they're stronger. I've had guys do S&C for a lot of the jiu-jitsu guys have done it with me for about 4 years now. I've had other guys come in before 6 weeks and they're like, I feel way stronger. And I'm like, you're probably not, I haven't got the heart to tell them, but they're probably not much stronger, but psychologically, they've certainly had a benefit of that feel more robust, that feel stronger because they're doing something, and that translates to mat performance and again, like psychology. So like I say, I think we can be one of the most important things in the sport of mixed martial arts or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it's not necessarily in the way we think we might be. Yeah, I think obviously clearly a thing of strong enough as well. I think there's a famous paper, and it's like on lower limb injuries and a double body weight back squat, and it's kind of like the holy grail in terms of the curve of reducing injuries goes down till you get to double body weight, then it stays and plateaus. And again, it doesn't have to be, I think that's the thing, it doesn't have to be whether it would be a squat or a split squat or an RDL. I think just having some heavier loading again can have a big effect on sort of reducing lower limb injuries. And like you said, and then there's obviously, of course, there is a neural effect of all of the heavier loading. That's one thing we do not get from mat work.
Sure. Yeah.
Which can have and it's a game of inches at the higher level. So it could just be the difference between finishing a takedown or not, and these kinds of things. So.
And one of the things we haven't spoken about today really is, if we're looking at that, like neural loading from strength training and the impact that's going to have positively, but also potentially the impact that's going to have in terms of how well someone's going to recover from a session. What sort of work do you do with people in terms of managing their overall training load and recovery, and how they can kind of optimize that to get the most out of their training?
So this is and I've spoken to quite a lot of S&C coaches through this block from all over. It's been a really good opportunity actually to reach out to a lot of guys. This is the thing that I want to do. And I do with a couple of the younger lads that I help out, because I can have a little bit more control over their overall training schedule, because I kind of mentor them as well as with fighting and with S&C. But it's really hard to do, but I want a club eventually, or I want to be part of a head coaching staff eventually, and I think that's where it has got to come down to high-low days, because of that, exactly what you're saying about sort of hammering CNS and neural drive from heavier lifting, and how to manage it across the training week. If you look at other sports, they would have their high speed velocity sessions preceding their heavier lifting sessions on a similar day or something like that. So I feel like we can do similar, is in we have our hard wrestling or hard sparring sessions, we have our heavier loaded CNS lifting later on that day. That means then they get a full, nearly like they're going to get about 36 hours recovery minimum until they do another high day. Yeah. That would mean maybe our next day is more like low intensity. Maybe we're doing drills, we're doing like aerobic capacity more work, or lactic work on pads. We're not really pushing too hard. If I had a perfect club where I could run how I would want MMA to be run, which at some point I may look at doing, it would be to have that kind of high-low model, with maybe resting heart rate and HRV going alongside it. The problem with our sport is there's so little money in the sport, and people at all different stages of the career, it can be very hard practically to do. I think that's the problem a lot of us all face. Because like I've fought at just sub-elite level, say European level, and like good luck, you're never living off that money, you know? So like there's not the infrastructure in the sport, so it's a business. You'll probably know your jiu-jitsu club. Like if you wanted to get them guys on the mat as good as jiu-jitsu as possible, it would be boring as fuck. Like it would be boring. You would be drilling the same things week in, week out on the key things that work in competition, the key guard passes, key takedowns, repetition, like how freestyle wrestlers and wrestlers drill, you know? Yeah, sure. But how busy would you, how many members would you lose? And you have the hobbyist that just wants to come in and philosophize for 30 minutes and have a couple of rolls and go home. You know, that's jiu-jitsu, that's a business. So, like,
I've been trying to think lately about how to structure classes to get those people to work harder, to improve their fitness, and it's something that's on my mind a lot. And I've come up with a few ideas in terms of kind of cyclical drills, or no, they're not my ideas, but I've actually poached some ideas from the MMA team in terms of like drills where you don't stop until there's no reason to stop, because you're constantly going from one position to the other.
Little bit of a
just to keep people moving.
Grip angle or something.
Yeah, that's it. So, but like you look around, you're like, why have you stopped? There's no need to stop. You stop when I tell you to stop. But people, like jiu-jitsu guys, just want to chat and sit and talk.
And because of that, and MMA is still similar as much as we want to, you know, we have super successful gym, and you know, we have probably 10 to 20 real high level fighters, and a lot of kind of, there's the social aspect, there's the hobby, there's the, you know, and it's the same. It's a business at the end of the day. Still, it's not like a pro sports team, and it's not like a you know, we like looking at. I love looking and watching at college wrestling, but where the kids do as the told. But you know, we got to accept that. So it can be difficult to run that. As much as I have ideas of what I would want is best practice, we have got to be aware that we're in the real world, and we need to kind of do the best that we can do, I think. And I think what you said earlier is if we can educate the athletes so that when they have autonomy, which they're going to have, they can make correct decisions, or at least more informed decisions. At this moment in time, I think that's the best that we can do. I'd like to hope in years to come we can have a system where we have guys on high and low days, and the skills coaches are involved with the S&C, the S&C coaches are involved with the skills, you know, more like other pro high-end sports, but perhaps we're a little bit away from that right now.
I think it's achievable, and I think we're maybe edging towards it in certain areas of the country, you know, in places like where I work, and I'm sure where you work, where you've got a line of communication with your head coaches. I think there's definitely scope for it. And I think technologies kind of help with things like the Whoop bands, you know, heart rate monitors and elite HRV and all these things where you can actually a lot of these things are moving towards that, you know, like in some small group training gyms, they have like the my zone bands, and everyone kind of works and they're looking at how hard they're working, their own MEPs and things like that. And so you've got that kind of community feel being driven by technology. I think potentially there's could be a movement towards that with some of the HRV kind of and the recovery bits of technology, you know, using those within teams and kind of having, you know, that kind of group accountability as well. So when people are coming in, you know, you've got it all up on a screen and it's like, look, how hard are you training today? Let's keep an eye on that, like in terms of like the metrics that are coming up and this sort of thing. I think potentially there's a role for technology in this.
From a longevity perspective, I think that would be like very, very useful because like, and this is where it's like, we can have what we agree is what we would want as best practice, but the sport's just so chaotic, it can be hard to do that. So a guy does a Monday morning practice and that's his high day, for an example, and this is where you say the HRVs can work, but depending on what their rounds are on that, you know, who they get paired with, who comes in on that day, you know, it can be as simple as like who in your weight class is in that day. And if it's, you know, if you're a high level pro and there's just amateurs in, you're working at sort of max intensity. So if you could see that, maybe that means that you either do something, that's where you go and do your extra conditioning after and you keep that a high day. But maybe you go and do some intervals after your wrestling practice to really take you to that high day zone. Or if you're absolutely spent and you've done 5 5s with other guys in and around your level and you're spent, your metrics are going to show that. You come in on Tuesday and you can see where you're at. So with your HRV, that dictates the training, you know, the training session the next day. And the coach wouldn't necessarily have to be, because the coach is like, well, he's doing that and he done that yesterday and you done that yesterday. So why aren't you doing that today? Well, he might have worked at a 6 out of 10 and I worked at a 9 out of 10. Just because we did the same practice doesn't mean we've done the same practice, depending who we go with.
Yeah. It's actually, it's interesting. And it almost, as a coach, you could set a system in play and then it almost takes a lot of that monitoring away from you because you're being led by the metrics, you're being led by the data, and you're just allowing people to follow whatever strand of your system you've set in place, depending on the data that's kind of coming into play. It's almost, it's putting the autonomy back on the fighters with your system, you know.
And I think at the higher levels, once you've passed your first few sort of, you know, you've had 5 to 10 amateur fights, I think you can definitely go towards that where probably being available is the biggest commodity for success. I know that's a truth I've probably found out quite hard. Like I've had a few injuries, a mistake, which should give me the perspective I've got now, like from the middle of my career. And, you know, like being available, I've got no doubt if I'd have been available, I'd have been in the UFC a couple of years ago.
Right.
And like, what was I trying to achieve? Like you say, mental toughness. Look, if you've had 10 fights, you're probably tough.
Yeah.
Maybe when people are starting out, that they need to have a few, but I think they get that from sparring, competitive sparring. But you know, it's better for them to be found out in the gym than it is in front of all the friends and family. That if it's not for them, it's not for them.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, psychologically it's better to find that out, you know, in the gym than in public, you know. But other than that, I think, you know, once you're an experienced amateur, the thing of are you tough or not is it's a myth, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So would you, I mean, obviously you trained in the States and the UK, would you say there's more of this kind of culture of more professionality in a lot of the gyms in the States? They're moving towards this kind of sports team level of kind of organizing their thing, or do you think we've got a similar level over here?
No, I think in the States there are, maybe not with the S&C yet, because they're most of the gyms I've been to have still been, the S&C is not necessarily intertwined with the skills work. It's like a separate place. ATT was a good place at Phil Daru. He's heavily involved with their fighters, and it's all at one place, which I think does help. Phil's a good coach, like I say, and there's things I agree with all coaches and things that I disagree with all coaches. On there, with all of us. but they had it quite good in that token in terms of like it was all in house. But I think the way the sports practices are run abroad and now coming to over here, but it's probably took this time for us to get here. As in, and what I mean by that is, so when I was training in my early 20s and teens, there wasn't world-class fighters here. So what we would have to do is go to our mate who's a good boxing coach, an amateur boxing coach, and train with him, or go to one of, like, you know, we're lucky in the UK we had Braulio and Roger shoot offs, so they're all of their black belts. So we go and train with one of their black belts or with them for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or we go. I mean, I would say Gym 01 was probably one of the first MMA gyms in that regard that they did. MMA was their goal. Yeah. Sounds like Dinky Ninjas up north and Carbine, like the word London Shoot. There were gyms doing it, but certainly not in Birmingham. And even up till recently, we've only just really made the change. I was kind of doing it now because I went to Alpha Male. I was training with Brad quite a lot, and I went to ATT with Brad. And every practice is scheduled. What are we here for? We're here for MMA. We want to be the best MMA fighters we can be. Okay, so Monday is cage wrestling and wrestling specifics based on MMA. You know, like Tuesday we're doing MMA sparring. Wednesday we're doing cage work, technique. Thursday maybe we're doing shoot box technique. Our jiu-jitsu is geared towards MMA. Alpha Male was very similar. Their pro practices were always geared towards MMA. In this country, I believe, like certainly in Birmingham, it was all like the best coaches were like a jiu-jitsu coach, so they had their bias, would do Noki jiu-jitsu, or our best wrestlers were just wrestling coaches that not done MMA. So we'd go to freestyle wrestling, and we would have to, again, like you talk about longevity. Well, how much more time are we having to put in? Like, as a pro fighter, if you're on the mats and you're wasting an hour a week doing a reverse De La Riva guard, passing or something, you know, again, that's mileage on the clock in terms of that longevity. If you're training specific to the sport that we're actually doing, our grappling's MMA, you know, I think that's where America were quite a bit ahead of the UK. We've really changed now over the past sort of 6 months in Birmingham to what are we doing? What's our goal? The goal of being a world-class jiu-jitsu guy is completely different than what an MMA's grappling guy is going to look like. Yeah. They're almost different, but they are different sports. Yeah. So, like, I think that's where America were very far ahead of England, maybe. But now everyone is starting to pick up on that. Like, even striking, boxing and Thai boxing aren't MMA striking. The distance is completely different. The entries are complete wrestling. The entries are strikes, not ties and clinch. So that's where I think we've been most far behind in terms of training. But I'd say S&C wise, we're all much alike still at the moment. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think since I've been based predominantly at Gym 01 or completely at Gym 01, it's opened my eyes to the MMA systems and how everything is just geared towards MMA. You know, if it's a jiu-jitsu move, it might be great in jiu-jitsu, but if it opens you up for punches and things like that, it's being, you know, discarded because it's not going to be useful. And it's really interesting watching their practices and how they approach, you know, grappling from a completely different mindset and a completely different perspective. You know, I think it's took a generation of coaches, like, because I suppose Jim, I don't know who coached. I know Brian used to coach Jim. I know you got Caswell and Phil Harris, you know, who fought that high level, and then they can take their experiences to coach now. Similar to like Birmingham, there's people like Leon, Tom Breeze, myself. We've fought at high levels, so when we can coach with that perspective in mind. Brad's a great example. Like, you know, Brad's coaching. If I lived in London, I would be training with him, but he's fought at that high level, and now he's coaching. Maybe 5 years ago, we didn't have those coaches who were at that level to then coach MMA. Most of the coaches that I found were still from that individual discipline and didn't understand the whole picture of mixed martial arts. So I think in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, when a lot of my generation retire and coach, I think we're going to have a lot of very high level coaches across the country. Yeah, it's exciting times. So look, just to finish off, I ask all the guests what their top 3 tips are for kind of maximizing their performance and really their health, I suppose, off the back of that.
So this is my question to you. What are your top 3 tips for maximizing your health and performance that anyone can start like kind of putting into their training or their lifestyle, straight away?
Number 1, sleep hygiene. Make sure you're sleeping.
Yeah. That's a
Number
common
2,
one, that.
Number 2 would be to tie them up, to get healthy. So if you're an athlete and you've got aspirations to achieve something, look at what kind of like the average body fat is, or the successful attributes that these kind of guys have at that level, and you can control. It's controllable. So like, get your weight in check, get your body comp in check, get your overall health in check, and then also go and find a professional and follow their advice, whatever that may be. I'm an athlete and I'm a coach, and I pay a coach to coach me. So the likelihood is like, if you're just a fighter who listens to Joe Rogan, you don't know what you're going on about, pay a coach, listen to your coach, be consistent, and good things will happen.
Yeah, great. The common themes are coming up. Common themes, the sleep one definitely is a common theme. But that's brilliant, Chris. Look, thanks for joining us today. We had a really great chat. We covered some, really a variety of different topics there. And hopefully you guys at home listening to this can kind of take some kind of actionable bits from that, and kind of start putting that into your training and thinking about the way that you're kind of approaching your training, so that you can have a longer and healthier career. Thanks for joining us today, Chris. Where can people kind of get hold of you if people want to work with you, or they want to kind of read more or hear more about your kind of thoughts around these subjects? Where can they get hold of you?
So mainly business-wise, I have a website, chrismiah.com, and then I have an Instagram account, Chris Miah Combat Sports and Chris Miah Strength and Conditioning. And then after that, I have a website and a Patreon, which I go into a bit more depth on some of my sort of like articles, a bit more science-based work. But I share a lot of stuff on social media, and just reach out. Even if it's just if it's a simple question, I'm always happy to help and happy to kind of give my input to guys, and hopefully we get the sport a little bit more professional over the next few years.
Great stuff. Thanks, Chris.
No worries. Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay guys, I think you'll all agree there were some really amazing insights from one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in combat sports in the UK, in my opinion. Some really good stuff about managing your workload and managing your intensities, and just trying to shift that focus away from that do more, work harder attitude to a work smarter attitude. And I think for anyone in combat sports, but certainly for those guys who are kind of up and coming at the moment and trying to make a name for themselves, or people that want to get into combat sports, this is fast becoming the approach to take. And it's great to see that there's young kind of hungry coaches out there who are looking to kind of keep the sport developing and keep moving things towards that kind of science-based approach that we see in a lot of sports that have really well developed strength and conditioning departments. So I was really, absolute pleasure to catch up with Chris, and I'll definitely be having him back to talk about the subject further. Go and follow him, go and like and share and comment on his posts with the links below this video. Go and share and comment and like this interview. It really helps us be able to produce more content like this. If you haven't checked out our members hub, the performance hub, our members site, then go and check that out as well. We've got a free month using the coupon code community. There's loads going on, so get involved, guys, because we're really trying to kind of push this, and there's loads of content for you guys to start digesting and starting to take your training to the next level. So get involved, and we'll see you next time.